Amazing. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to thank you for taking time out of your day to sit with me and chat a little bit about, learning and integrating human design into your day, into your life, into your journey. And before we get started, I do want to introduce Geneviève Dowling, a global biohacking educator that focuses on helping people have more energy, vitality, and time. Jen, I'm so honored to have you with me today. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here. Exciting. You said that juicy word integration, and so I'm all excited for this.
I love that. So it's been like what, like 3 or 4 years now since we discovered that you're like a 2-4 emotional manifesting generator, cross of the sleeping phoenix. I'm just so curious to know, like, what are some preliminary thoughts or things that come up when you think of what life was like before, I guess, learning human design up to now? And maybe if I make it more specific for you, to get more specific for your sacral, how would you say that human design has supported you to have more energy, vitality, and time?
So, I mean, I've been in the personal development world, I feel, since I was a child. And one of the things that I love about that is really being able to explore different modalities, because I truly feel that anytime we learn something about ourselves, even if it's something we've already learned, we're going to see it through a different lens. Yet, what I found so unique about human design, it was like really peeling back the layers to behaviors and personality traits that have become part of you from the subconscious layers. And that's something that I hadn't really understood before, especially when it comes to the emotions and understanding them. I mean, we have so many stereotypes about like women and being feminine and having all of these emotions coming up and always saying it's like hormonal or it's this, yet really understanding where the root of some of these waves, as you always call it, come from has been truly transformational. And, I know you use like the 2-4 and the this, and like to all of you, it's like, I still don't know what all that means. And I don't think it's necessary. It's like over the last 3 or 4 years, being able to really uncover this, it's been amazing to just feel like I have more tools in my toolbox to be
Mm.
able to understand myself and
Mhm.
be able to like move forward.
I freaking love that. So I want to get dive a little bit deeper in talking about that emotional wave. I remember, some of the things that we discovered learning about this journey of human design with the emotional wave and learning to honor it. I'm just so curious to know, like, how has honoring your emotional wave affected your decision making processes?
So I think whenever it comes to a piece of who we are or how we're showing up in the world, or how we become triggered, or like how we make decisions, it's it's a journey of observation. Yet we cannot observe things that we don't know. And you and I always say, like, once you see something, you can't unsee it. But until you see it, it's really hard to understand how to create a proper framework for it. And that was me in my emotions. I was someone, or I still am someone, that is very good under high levels of stress, meaning making decisions, doing what needs to be done, or at least that's what I thought I was able to do. Yet, what I realized through this process of human design is that I was operating in like two different systems. One system was becoming very paralyzed by this emotion and suppressing it because I felt that it was an obstacle. I felt that it was something wrong. It was slowing me down, holding me back. And then the other side of it was I would use that like undercurrent of emotions internally as fuel, yet
Mm,
not in a way to ride it, in a
mm,
way to like use frustration, sadness, anger as like, look at me now, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to do everything in my external world to completely like
mm,
fabricate almost an illusion,
mm.
wearing more masks of what I was feeling versus what I was doing. And so it was very interesting to start noticing how I was showing up in ways that were actually exhausting, and
Mm.
not understanding the exhaustion that came with not fully understanding and observing emotions. And I think that rings true in all areas of life.
Mhm.
It's how often do we have the ability to consciously choose to step back and slow down to observe those patterns. And I
Mhm.
think human design is one of the modalities that really helps to bring awareness into our day-to-day life.
I freaking love that. And how you're saying that, like, you were leveraging this emotional wave that was happening without you even realizing it, but it was acting as a tool towards exhaustion. And so, like, how do you feel now, like, creating that awareness? Do you have something in you that where you like just to know, like, I know what decisions I need to make when it comes to the wave coming to its clarity point? Like, do you have any like clarity over all this time discovering like I'm in a wave and I know when my wave is complete and I know this is the step I need to take? Do you have any insight on that?
So for the first few years after we really lived with that, I think that was always at the forefront of my mind consciously,
Mm,
where I would recognize, because I think that's what, I mean, anything that we want to make change on or like progress in is like number one, being able to become aware. And so at the beginning, every time I would feel this like volcanic eruption of some type of emotion inside, I would be like, oh, this is the wave. And then the other piece of that is like awareness is number one, but
mm,
number two is there's nothing out there that's going to give us the tools to surrender and soften into that and feel it.
mm,
So, like, I feel that human design gave me that awareness. It was kind of like the shining light on the like subconscious program that I was running.
mm,
And then over time, by being able to name it, recognize it, lean into it, and understand it without trying to change it, now that was the foundation to really stepping deeper into the root cause of the emotion. So
mm,
now I understand emotions as there are some emotions that are our body's wisdom, and
mm,
then there are other sides of emotions that we're taking on from other people or becoming triggered. So
mm,
I think that was like the deeper work after a few years of really understanding the emotional wave,
mm,
that now it's kind of become embodied,
mm,
where the waves are not as drastic, they're not as big, but that's also because I've built a relationship with it. And
mm,
that has allowed me to become a lot more intuitive to be able to be like, oh, this is an emotion, a sensation. It's not who I am. Was this an internal wisdom? Was this an external wisdom? And what do we want to do with it? So
mm.
that's been really remarkable.
I love that. And it triggers me to think of boundaries and the creation of boundaries when it comes to allowing yourself to experience and express your emotional waves. I know personal side of like the steps that you have to take. Do you want to speak a little bit about that? Of like how you were able to create boundaries or like maybe like I guess like the encouragement to create boundaries to allow yourself to express that wave. Do you have any words on that?
I think that our body has so much knowledge and wisdom to share with us. Yet, as a society, especially in Western culture, we move so fast and have so much pressure to keep up that we, or at least myself, I became really good at overriding it. And
Mm,
so, in my opinion, looking back now, because I feel like I'm in a really different phase compared to when we were working this at the beginning, I now recognize that overriding those emotions was dismissing my body's wisdom, which
mm,
means that I was never in full congruency of trust with myself. So
mm,
now I think of, just as we're speaking about this, I'm like, how can we create boundaries if we don't trust our instinct? And we always say gut feeling and we always say intuition. Yet I also feel that sometimes we use those words and those concepts as a crutch instead of actually knowing what that feels. Because when you know, like you always talk about this, an F yes or an F no, when you know what that feels like, you don't have to say, oh, it's my gut instinct, oh, it's my intuition. It's just a yes or a no.
yeah.
So you get to like skip those steps and just be so certain of what you're doing that you don't like, I used to always like, it reminds me of like chewing a piece of food until like there's no moisture left and you can't swallow it. That's what I used to do in my mind to make a decision. And
Mm,
then I would make the decision and need validation on the decision because I realize now I just didn't trust my own my own instinct.
Mhm.
And so, like, whether it's an emotional wave or not, like, there is gold
Mhm.
inside all of those sensations. But
Mm.
we like, and I was always thinking that a sensation meant something was wrong when
Mhm.
it's really not the case.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I remember, I mean, maybe I personally would love to chat about it if you're open to it, talking about like how maybe when you were growing up or other points of your life where you felt like maybe it wasn't appropriate to express yourself emotionally. What do you think was the key pivoting factor where you were like, I'm going to express myself fully moving forward? Was there anything where you were like, I understand that this is an important part of my process. And now I get to be fully myself with my emotional body. And I'm no longer going to hide that. I'm no longer going to pretend that that's not there.
I don't think that there was one pivotal moment.
Mm.
I think it's been a journey and I think it still is a journey. Like,
Mm.
I don't believe that there's any like final destination in this
Sure.
discovery.
Yeah.
Yet, it's so interesting. We always hear about when we were young, like our parents or people we are around telling us like, don't be too loud or you're too emotional and all of these things. And yes, I do think that that contributes to it. Yet what I've realized in my like in-depth passion, I guess you can call it, or obsession with emotional intelligence is
Mhm.
that there's like ways to express emotions to ourselves, and
Mhm.
there's also a way that we use emotions for attention.
Of
And
course.
I think when I made that distinction, like I recognize that sometimes I was using emotion as a way
Mm.
to get attention because I didn't feel seen, heard, but really that was all internal. So
Mm.
it's like, I think that's been the biggest discovery is like, when am I using, I call them superpowers now, like
Yeah.
you and I have talked about that. Like,
Yeah.
when am I using this superpower in a way that's not constructive?
Yeah.
And what that shows me now is that, like, what is it that I need to do for me to not need to use emotions for that type of connection or attention?
Mhm.
And then the other part of it is like, when there's a difference about being vulnerable, because I think vulnerability is like what opens us up to like full connection. Yet we cannot be vulnerable if we are constantly in this like addictive place of certain
Mhm.
emotions. And I notice that a lot, like these lower frequency, not good or bad, but like low frequency emotions of anger and sadness and grief, we can get really stuck in that and use it as a reason not to move forward in certain areas and constantly find the same type of people and experiences to validate those feelings.
Mhm.
So I think that like we said before, becoming aware of emotions and then being able to recognize them and then elevating that like curiosity to how am I using these?
Mm.
Everything changed for me. Because I
Mm.
was like, wait, I don't want to act out in this way for attention because I'm attracting the people, the places, the opportunities that like are not for my highest good.
Yeah.
So that's been pivotal, but that's a continuous
Of
process.
course. Of course. I love this so much. It's like very much talking about like everything we do attracts everything that we receive. And I hear you leveraging this power, this gift of your emotional solar plexus, allowing it to be something that's empowering instead of something that is like driven from many different, ego mind kind of like spaced things. So I love this. And I kind of want to pivot a little bit and talk to you about being a Manny Jen, right? The one thing I can say about Jen is my best friend in the world. So I love so much when her and I are hanging out and she's just like, okay, I got to putter. Like she's got to like do a lot of like this and do that. And she'll be doing dishes while we're, chatting. And, me as a generator, that's just never going to really be my journey doing that at the same time. Yet I'm curious to know, like, for you in discovering yourself being a manifesting generator, what is the importance of keeping things moving for you? I would love to know if you have any insight on that.
I think that for so many of us, we're in a really interesting time in this world. And the gift that you give so many people is permission to just see what you've always known,
Mm.
yet not. celebrated it. Let's be real. At least for myself, when I sat down with you or when I sit down with anyone I'm working
Yeah.
with, it's not a shock. It's not a surprise. It's more like because it's things that we already know, yet it's things that we didn't know how to verbalize or didn't know how to celebrate.
Yeah.
So for me, like I used to think that like my puttering was like procrastination, or, I remember I'm the kind of person that will have like, my partner always laughs. I'll have like 10 things on the run, 2 things done, but by the end of the day, it's all perfect. And so I'm like, why do I need to change that? Yet I didn't understand that until we talked about it. So I just think like stepping into this like discovery of human design is really, first of all, finding the right person, because you give so much insight without needing or wanting anything. And then it just gives permission to celebrate things that were kind of always in the background.
Mhm. Not having to make us wrong for who we actually are.
Totally.
So I'm curious to know, this might be something that you've discovered or not. I'm curious to know if you've discovered how to maybe deplete your sacral by the end of the night so that way you can get well rested. Do you have anything, to maybe add on that? I know as a Mani-Gen, y'all have way more energy than some other people do. Have you discovered like maybe tips or tricks on that end?
That's a big question. I think we could like dive deeper into this also another time,
I
because I
like.
think this is powerful. I think that it all comes back to capacity.
Mm,
There are days where I have a lot to give, to a lot of output, and I can feel it. It comes up as like a restlessness. And that's again like understanding the sensations of the body's wisdom. And so I know that I'm someone who's traveling all the time. So, like, what are the foundational tools to have in place so that I can keep some sort of a routine that's also open to flexibility wherever I am?
yeah.
And I think that's a really big key for people in general that I notice a lot. It's like, what is your foundational go to, your tools for body, mind, and soul? And
Mm,
what I've learned is that if I don't give 3 areas each attention during the day, I'm
mm,
not depleted. So if I'm like only using the mind or only using the body, then I don't feel satisfied.
mm,
And it's not about like having to like push yourself to fall over and sleep. It's just like, for myself, anyways, like, how have I used the 3 bodies in a day? And
mm,
at the end of the day, if there's something missing, if I don't feel satisfied, or if there's still a lot of energy, like stopping, not guessing what I need, because I used to do that all the time.
mm.
Used to guess what I need, and I used to be like the little pharmacist with all different supplements and things, like trying to like concoct my potions for like how I wanted to feel in the day, instead of being like, oh no, it's just like I didn't get enough movement, so I'm gonna go for a walk. So it's
Mm.
like being able to pause, ask, trust, and then take action.
I love that so freaking much. One of the things that I teach everyone is that the thing that the generator hates more than anything in this life is like wasting their time. But a thing that the Mani-Gen hates more than anything is doing the same thing over again. I'm like just curious to know if you have any strategies that you've incorporated in your life to avoid having to do something over again.
I still do things over again, but
I
not all
love
things.
that.
I think
Yes.
that like the one thing manifesting generators, what I've learned is that we move fast. And because we move fast and because we just like take it all on, the pause becomes, at first, was very frustrating. And what
Mm,
I realize now, that the pause to ask questions, I think there is nothing, for myself and a couple other manifesting generators I know, it is absolutely vital to have a community of people or a network of people that are catalysts, that are like you fully respect and trust. Because if we don't ask questions along the way,
mm,
then we don't have information to process of how it can be better. And
mm,
I think that was my biggest thing. It was like learning when to pause and ask questions, and having the right people in the network to be able to ask those questions to. That was a
mm.
huge, huge pivot. But I still redo things.
Of course. I mean, that's life. Where, I'm going to be, wasting my time, as a, regular human who does regular human things. So I think that's so powerful. And that to me, for anybody else that's in the human design industry or learning human design, that to me is what informing is. It's the whole practice of discovering what is necessary so we can ask better questions, and we ask better questions and inform more of what we need. So just the way you said it, that to me, that's what human design is all about. It's like doing it in your real life, integrating it into your real life. You don't have to have the fancy words, but you're doing it in, the real. So I think that's absolutely beautiful. And I think my last question that I would like to ask you today, so what advice would you give to other two lines, so hermits, when it comes to managing action time versus hermit time?
I actually think the hermit thing was a bigger, now that I look at it, I think the understanding the need of the hermit directly correlated to understanding the emotions.
Mm.
I'm a very fast-paced person. For people that know me, I'm like, I want to be in peak performance, high performance state as often as possible. And what I didn't understand was that rest and sleep were the most important components of biohacking my own ability to stay in peak performance. And that, I think, is the biggest gift, where for anyone who this resonates with, like, when I'm on the go all the time, to have space in quiet, no music, no nothing, no speaking, to just flow into the things that fill my cup is like crucial. And I had very little awareness of this. I did it, but I did it. I would do it as like a burnout reaction instead of a choice. So understanding the hermit piece, once it's also like the emotional intelligence, right? Like, okay, so am I getting really frustrated often? Am I getting triggered by things that never trigger me? And being able to stop and observe that, it's like, oh, I haven't been able to have that decompression time. Or, my morning routine fills the hermit cup. I have a very extended morning routine. It doesn't always happen. Right now I'm at my partner's family's and tons is going on. So it's not like an hour and a half. It's more like 20 minutes. Yet starting and ending the day with that like internal time, and then also managing, if I'm on the road and at events and speaking and serving for 2 weeks, I know I'm going to need 2 to 3 days of just like decompression time. And that doesn't mean do nothing. Absolutely not. It's like, what are the things I can do in that space so that I can think? I think a lot of people that have the two line, from what I feel, because my partner is also, that we're very like high functioning cerebral people. And if we don't have the space to think, contemplate, then like everything becomes a little bit chaotic and disastrous. So I think that giving, again, the beautiful thing about what you do is giving permission to see that once you see it, it's up to you to integrate it and take action on it. And like, I don't believe in using modalities as an excuse for a way of being. I believe it's like information for you to take or leave to like elevate your being. And hermit time has been, I even think, more beneficial because it goes hand in hand with riding the emotional wave. You can't recognize it without hermit time. And I didn't put that together till right now. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's so big.
I love that. I love that so much. And even like considering like how important your space is. I one thing I learned a lot about a lot of two lines is that like the sanctuary has to be exactly that. It needs to be your sanctuary. Maybe would you be open to discussing like or expressing like how over time your place has become your sanctuary and what that means for you?
The words on my heart lately have been psychological safety. And I think that, so my home is my sanctuary, yet also there are other components of my life that I realized are my sanctuary. So it's like, for example, when I'm going from hotel to hotel to event, my sanctuary becomes my morning routine. And when I put the blindfold on and the earplugs in and I go into my daily meditation, that becomes a sanctuary that I can take anywhere. And I used to use being away from home as an excuse, but it's not. Yet my home is, I call it the charging pad. It's like, I believe in all the senses. So like my home, the visuals, like I like white on white on white. I don't like clutter. I want it to feel flowy and free and clean. And that's how I set up my space. Smell is very important to me. Natural scent, using a diffuser, the type of music, like all of these things carry a frequency. And so you can be home for a week and feel exhausted and overwhelmed, or you can be home for a week and feel inspired and lit up. And it's fine tuning the things around you and the things that you're taking in. Like, I don't think even sometimes people understand that, like, what you're looking at on social media or what you're listening to as music interrupts the
Mhm.
process of recovery. So
Mhm.
I've realized that, like, I can create that on the go, yet coming home to a space that just feels liberating and safe to think. Because, like, I'm sorry, if you're a manifesting generator and you come home to like clutter and chaos, you are not going to contemplate. It's
Mhm.
impossible. So that is so important.
I freaking love this conversation. I know that we're going to be able to talk way longer about this, but I'm going to cut it off here because I'm sure that we can do a recording number 2 and 3 and 4. And I think that's what we should do. So I just want to take the moment to thank you, Jen, so much.
Thank you. I love this.
This has been absolutely incredible. And if you want to learn more about biohacking and, taking care of yourself and vitality and, saving time and energy and all that good stuff, you can follow Jen at GG Dowell. I'll put the link below. And I just want to say thanks again and, bless you. And I can't wait to see how this journey unfolds for you with the lens of human design under it.
And thank you. And I totally recommend to people, like, if you're curious,
Mm.
just even just the initiation session or whatever it's called, just get curious and find the right people. I mean, the right people are the coaches and the mentors that and don't want you to rely on them, that want you to win. That's what Pat does.
Mm. Thank you for that reflection. I really appreciate that. That's all we got today. Thank you so much, and we'll chat later.